great to see everyone here. Start off our week right with some learning and some growing. Of course, we want to thank the Jacobs family for sponsoring this morning. Leila Nishmas, Earl's father, Elio, Yosef, and Moshe. His neshama should have an aliyah.
Amen.
And it should be a spus. All of our brachos and all of our learning and our growth today should elevate his neshama higher and higher. Thank you so much for your sponsorship. Of course, we want to thank Chazaq as well for partnering with us in these programs that we run. Chazaq, as you know, does really, really life-changing work. And before introducing Dr. Perlman, I'm going to reintroduce our friend, Ravi, who's going to speak a little bit this morning just about Chazaq and the Chavo and Juggle. Ravi.
Thank you. I want to start by saying thank you for everything. It's going to show always fire on Chazaq. I want to maybe just, I'm a week off from the Super Bowl, but I wanted to say I think a message from the Super Bowl that we can relate to the shul. That obviously there's certain components in any sport that make a team successful. One of them, of course, is that you have to have unity within the team. Every single person, whether they're on the bench, whether they're a starter, whether they're the quarterback, everybody has to be united. And of course, that's one of the components of the shul. You have people of all backgrounds, all ways of life and ages, and everyone is so united. Whenever I come here, it's such an inspiring thing. And of course, one of the components is culture. They talk about heat culture, all these, you have to have amazing culture in the team. And of course, whenever I come here, it's such a friendly environment of Ahavas Yisrael. Everyone cares for one another. It's such a friendly environment. And of course, you have to have an amazing coach, an amazing leader in a team. And of course, you have Rabbi Dansger, Baruch Hashem, and of course, all leadership. We'll do a round of applause for Rabbi Dansger. And just a quick word about Chazaq, of course, has organized and together with different shuls, like Ram sitting at one of the shuls, one of those shuls we work together with, one of different shiur and programs or to inspire the community. And it has a major focus on public school outreach programs in over 20 different locations to give inspiration, to give Jewish education to the public school students. And of course, just like today's topic, building a healthy home, and that's what Chazaq is all about. Helping people of all backgrounds, helping their relationships, helping them live that Torah life with Hashem. I thank Dr. Perlman for joining us. And now we hand it back over to my dance Gersita. Thank you.
Okay. So I have to say, I'm very, very excited as this is, truthfully, this is my first time hearing Dr. Perlman speak. But I should tell you that immediately when we, when we put out the flyer that Dr. Perlman was speaking, within seconds actually, I got the emails and responses back saying how people were so excited for Dr. Perlman to come and what an opportunity we have here. And Dr. Perlman, of course, is speaking about a topic that is so important, the topic of building a healthy home. And this is really an area of expertise that Dr. Perlman has. And I personally, as always, but certainly here, I'm very, very excited to hear from Dr. Perlman's words. And with honor, it is my tremendous honor and pleasure to call on Dr. Perlman to speak this morning.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I'm going to put my coffee here with you. Good morning. Thank you so much, Rabbi Dansger, and this beautiful new community that I get to meet. One of the pleasures that I get to have is I get to meet people, Jewish people from all around the world. And this is a particularly special, sweet moment when I get to meet a new community. So thank you for this opportunity. Chazaq and Torah Anytime, it is always an honor to partner with you in the beautiful work that you do. May this synagogue and all its members and the Chazaq and Torah Anytime communities have continued blessing in everything that matters to them. So when it comes to a healthy home, it's an important question that we ask, what makes something healthy? And one of the privileges that I get to have as a clinical psychologist, and more importantly, as a wife and a mother and a Jewish woman in the world, is I get to learn from the world and from other people that I work with what works well and what doesn't. I have every encounter that I have with a family, with a couple, with a woman that I work with, I get to see their world and I get to see what's important, what's not important. So what makes a home healthy? So there's so much to say about this. And today I decided to focus on 4 points that I found most important to be able to share. There's many things that have to be said about a healthy home, but today I wanted to focus on 4 points. A lot of the pieces of what I work with is early childhood trauma or adult trauma. That's a huge piece of the work that I get to do. It's a privilege to do it. It's being in the most kadosh, in the most holy places with people. And the question is, what does it mean to have healed trauma? And we could say there's such a thing as unhealed trauma and healed trauma. And what does that really actually mean? So I'm going to just make a reference to it, but I'm not going to spend my our entire talk today on that. But if we had to narrow down what is healed trauma versus not healed trauma, I would use one word, which is connection. When a person is connected to their parts and their mind, their heart, their soul are working together, most of the time, to me, that means health versus unhealth. The more connected someone is to the different parts of them, the more healthy their internal system is. In fact, we can use the word connection as one of the first premises of health. When a family comes in front of me, welcome, good morning. When a family comes in front of me and there is a conversation between a husband and wife that flows, there is a knowing between the child's eyes and the father's presence, there is something that feels like there is movement in the family, that means there's connection in the family. And a lot of times what we see in others as that's a healthy family, it's because it's a connected family. When there's a connection between a husband and wife, when there's a connection between parents and children. That's going to be the first piece of what I'm going to talk about is connection. So what does it mean? How do we connect to the people in our lives? You have already lived life and you know what connection is. And what I want to share with you about 2 parts of connection that feel most important to me. One is in parenting and the other one is in marriage. Parenting and marriage are 2 very different types of love. It's fascinating in the Sepharim and the Jewish text that talks about both loves. And it's also interesting what your instinct is right now. What do you think is considered a higher level of love? Both are considered of the highest levels, love, but this is from my interpretation for what I've learned. Do you think it's parenting or do you think it's marriage? Parenting, marriage? Marriage? It's fascinating. I just want to tell you the process that I have gone through because this is my topic of interest. When I went to get my doctorate, this is what I studied. I studied relationships. And I've always been fascinated by the idea of love and what is powerful love, what is impactful love. In fact, in Bereshit, in Genesis, when Adam was created by God, there's 2 times that Adam was created. And Rav Soloveitchik talks about this in his book. It's called Family Redeemed. If you can get your hands on that, it's a really powerful read. There is the first creation of Adam, which relates to the love of parenting. And then there's the second creation of Adam, which relates to the love of a marriage. So let's talk about parenting first. And what kind of love is the love of parenting? And what does it do for a child? This is an example that I like to give. I think I gave a talk a couple of nights ago. It was also Chazaq, I believe, Torah Anytime taped it. It was a time where I had to describe that my husband and I, we took our kids to an Airbnb in Deal, New Jersey. We stayed there for a couple of nights. And we took the kids out a bit. And there was a thunderstorm one of the nights. And we have mostly older kids, but we have one younger one. And he was amongst the older kids, but he got scared in the middle of the night and he couldn't find us. And he was hearing this thunderstorm and in this thunderstorm, he got scared. He didn't know what it was. He was in a new place and he couldn't find us. And then I saw him in the hallway. He was crying in the hallway. I grabbed him. And then he felt what in my arms? Connection, love, but it's a word that everyone's using now in psychology. He felt safe, right? This word safe. Safety, building a safe home, that's a big word. It's a big buzzword, and it's an important word. So he felt safe in my arms. So I wanted to ask you a question. When he felt this level of danger and fear, was he right to have been this afraid? Was he right? Was he in fact in that much danger? For him, he felt afraid, but he wasn't really in danger. Is this true? But because the noise was unknown to him, he didn't know how to interpret it. He doesn't have the context we have of what a thunderstorm means. So the unknown and the newness of it created a sense of danger inside him that was really partially an illusion. Is this true? Are we together? But then I held him in my arms and he felt fully safe. He can't feel safer. This is as safe as it gets for him. And of course, we're there to protect him, to do what we can for him. But let me ask you a question. If the danger had illusion in it, does the safety have illusion in it too? Is he fully safe? In all honesty, is there such a thing? So a child feels this fear and then feels this safety, but is the safety I'm providing for him fully safe? You tell me.
No.
It isn't. We want it to be so badly, right? We want it to be, but it's not fully safe. But what does it do for him? It gives him an ability to feel safety in that moment. It gives him the ability to know what safety feels like inside. So what a parent provides is a bridge for the child to experience safety, to experience love, to experience the worth that's already inside him, not because what we have to give is perfect, but because what we have to give is the way they learn about what's already inside them. So the more we show up, the more we give, the more we show a child's worth to them, create safety for them, reflect their worth to them, the more they know how to connect to it themselves. So a parent's love isn't perfect, but it's a bridge to the perfection that's inside them. And how does this come? How does this parent's love come? In that moment when I held him, right? Was this about him or was this about me? It was both, it's true, because I also felt more comforted as I was holding him because I felt sad for him that he was crying, right? But let's say right now, thank God, we have a son that's in Israel. He is learning in a yeshiva called Mevaseret. We're really proud of him. And last year when the war had started, we had 2 sons in Israel. And I had tell you that my husband and I both felt this instinct initially to grab them from the hallway and bring them home. There were thunderstorms that were not an illusion. We heard them loud and clear. We didn't know what that meant. And the parental instinct, really, of protection was to bring them home. We have a sister-in-law, Abigail and Daniel Gimpel, their son, Gabriel, who was just by us. He's serving in Gaza. He's going back in 2 weeks if that's still needed. And she had dropped him off at the base many times, the mother. And the mother has said to me, she said, every time I was driving and I was getting closer to the base, everything inside me was saying, turn around, take him home. Turn around, take him home. Just take him home. Don't drop him off. But when she does drop him off, and we didn't pick up our sons from Israel, is that love or is it not? What is it? It's love. So the love of parenting is always about giving to the child what the child needs. And sometimes it's with distance, and sometimes it's with closeness. But the point is that it's a one-way relationship where we're always the givers and they're the receivers. And what we give and don't give always has to do with what they need and don't need. It's a one-directional relationship. What we receive from them is a gift. If we know them, And if they know what's important to us, it's because we teach them, not because we need them to know us. Aloneness and connection is not fulfilled by parenting. The word levad, aloneness, is used with Adam too when he was created and his wife was taken from his ribs, and that was the relationship between a husband and wife. Lo tov, not good for a man to be levad, alone, is a marital type of love. And from what I learned from the Sepharim, from the sources, that it's actually an even deeper love than a parental love, is a marital love. Because in that love, it's no longer one directional. When we're but we are givers, but it's two directional. We're givers, we're receivers. In the marital love, who you are matters, not only so that you're a teacher, but also because you want to be seen, you want to be known, you want to be understood. Your personality matters. It's an even deeper love in some ways. And what have I seen matters in this kind of love? One of the top psychiatrists, Dr. Winnicott, he is the one that coined all this language of mirroring. You've heard of this idea of mirroring. So if you were to hold a baby in your hand right now, and the baby smiled at you, let's say it's not your baby, you don't even know whose baby it is, what are you going to do back? Naturally. You're going to smile back. Notice your faces. Some of you are even smiling thinking about it, right? This is mirroring. So when a parent smiles at a baby and the baby smiles, what does the baby learn? What'd you say? Baby learns love, be happy. How is the baby learning that? The baby is learning by what? Connection. When the baby sees you smile, they also see that they are smiling. They learn about their own smile through your smile. This is what we said in terms of you are a bridge to their knowing of their inner self. So they are kind of attached to you. And because of their attachment, they're able to learn from you and integrate from you. Do you see that? But something happens in adolescence, which is important when it comes to marriage. Because if we only see ourselves as extensions of others, then we cannot love the way a marriage requires to love. There was an example that just occurred, and I just want to tell you when I give you examples from my office. I have tremendous deep love and respect for the people I work with. When I talk about them, I don't really tell you, of course I change stories around so they're not identifiable, but it's not even that. I really tell you about what they've taught me as opposed to their story. And they teach me so much. Their lives are so rich with movement and growth. I cannot not share with you what they've taught me. So one wife was telling me, I cannot believe that in that moment where I needed my husband to show up for me the most, he ended up being an hour late to pick me up. I can't believe it. And she feels that rejection in that moment, that pain in that moment. And there's a lot of times when a couple comes in, what their ache is that one of two aches, either disconnect from each other or not being seen and valued as a person. It goes into one of these two categories. We don't have enough connection or we don't have enough knowing. And in the knowing is understanding, he doesn't understand me, she doesn't see me, she doesn't appreciate me. And in the connection is we don't spend enough time together, we're not a unit, we don't agree on things. The problems of marriage fall basically in one of these two categories. And we come home and I see that I needed him to apologize to me for being so late. And then he just goes into his room, closes the door, and I don't have access to him. I don't even know what's going on with him. Obviously, he had a bad day, and I don't even know what's going on with him. And this entire time, she's in the kitchen, just wishing to understand what's happening with him. Can you imagine such a scene? Maybe not in Roslyn. In Roslyn, And Rosalind thinks things like this don't happen. But outside of Rosalind, sometimes they do. And then I ask her, which is a question I love to ask, if you could do anything in the moment where you're in the kitchen and your husband's in a bad mood upstairs, if you could do anything you want, what would it be? Anything. What would she say? What do you think she would say? Thank you for the table. What would she say? What does she really want? What? Love? She wants to feel love, right? In that moment, she feels like her husband's in his own world and she's in her own world and she just wants to feel connection. Is that true? Does she feel like she has access to connection? The men in the room are saying, just come upstairs and talk to me. Tell me what's on your mind, right? And the women in the room are like, yeah, I totally get why she's not going upstairs. Yes? And this is what's happening in my office all the time. Why don't you come and tell me? Why doesn't she go upstairs and tell him she wants love? Why doesn't she? What? She wants him to know on his own, and also she doesn't feel like he wants it. She doesn't feel like he wants it. He'd rather be alone. And is there truth to that? Would he rather be alone? And the men inside, they're not nodding because some of their wives are here. But the men are saying, I don't know, she's onto something. They would rather be alone. That's where they're at in that moment. So then here is this piece. She feels rejected and disconnected. He is kind of alone and she's just in her rejection and pain. And guess what? The distance between them only grows. Because the next time this happens, even though the kitchen and the bedroom are the same distance apart physically, the distance between the two of them is further apart. And this is a cycle of marriage. All they want is each other, and all they do is miss each other. And the same thing gets repeated over and over again. And this is when they come in. They're like, there's like a helplessness. This cannot change, but there's a hope because they're in front of me. So what's one of the shifts? So we're still talking about connection. We said that a parental love is one directional. It's about being a giver to what the child needs. And the reason why a child's able to learn from the parent is because they don't see them as separate from the parent. Do you see that? So because they're so attached, they're able to internalize this bridge of, I'm safe, I'm loved, I matter. But now I'm talking about marital love, which is two-directional. And it has an important component that a love of a child doesn't have in the same way. So then I turn to her and I say, why is he upstairs by himself? He just doesn't want to talk to me. He's mad at me. I probably upset him. He just doesn't want to deal with me. But when I turn to him, if he could spend 10 minutes talking about what is going on for him inside, if we have enough of a relationship at that point, it has nothing to do with her. He's stressed. He just had a hard day at work. Something fell through. He got embarrassed. And in this place, he not only does he not know what to do with her, he doesn't even know that he could have somebody next to him when he feels this low. Why would I tell her about my stress? Why would I overwhelm her with it? In fact, a lot of the way that he built himself up and got to where he got to is by being alone and figuring it out on his own. I didn't worry my mother. I didn't worry my sisters. I had to figure it out on my own. So now I'm in my bedroom trying to figure this out on my own. So there's a whole world happening for him and a whole world happening for her, and they don't know about each other's worlds. So the first step of marital love is to be able to see the other as separate from you. To think, what is happening for him that has nothing to do with me? What is happening for her? What does she need that doesn't have to do with me? If a parental love starts with attachment, a marital love is built, starts with separateness. Seeing what is it in the other person, what's happening for him. Oh, maybe I didn't know he was so stressed. The truth is I kind of did know. And then I ask her, so what do you want to do now? It's like, I just want to go upstairs and give him a hug. When she starts to be able to see him as separate from him, then
He's not going upstairs.
it's true that we need 2 more sessions for that. You're right about that. But she also needs something from him.
And he's not giving her.
She needs also something from him. We're going to get there. We're going to get there. I know it's exciting when we talk about other couples. And we will get there. Yeah. So, you know what? Let's get there now. Let's take this further. The rabbi mentioned today that the definition of beauty is not just by the weather or something of the sort, right? In fact, the Torah talks about what is beauty, and it's one of my favorite definitions of beauty. Rav Moshe Shapiro talks about this in his books on the Parsha, on the weekly portion of the Torah. And he says that the ugliness is ki'ur, which is opaqueness. One of the definitions. There's 2, that when you don't see who the person really is on the inside, then you don't see their beauty. So beauty in a way is revelation, self-revelation. That the more transparent someone's soul is, the more beautiful they are. That's why our forefathers and foremothers were in some ways described as beautiful, because really their outer self represented their inner self. It wasn't a shell, it was a revelation. It was a window. The way they acted and the way they looked was a window and not a barrier. So why am I telling you this now? Because she feels rejected, and really what she needs to do is what? What does she need to do to overcome her rejection? Feel what for him? But what does she need to feel for him? Compassion, love, to be able to take the risk to go upstairs and give him a hug. Is this true? But what about him? He's a child of immigrants. He came here when he was young, and his parents were struggling. And he is the one that went and worked in the cleaners for 12 hours a day. And then he got through school little by little. And all the stress that he had, and the way that he became successful was by what? By being alone or by telling his mother everything? How? Aloneness is his strength. He keeps this inside. Also, he's like, if I show her that I'm so stressed, will she still like me? Will she still respect me even though I made all these mistakes? It is uncomfortable for him to share himself in this place. He doesn't know how to be together in aloneness. He doesn't know how to invite her into that dark place. He's like, when I'm successful, I know how to connect. But when I feel not successful and I feel low, I don't know how to invite anyone else in that place. But then she says to him, but I'm lonely. We can't only be connected when things are good. And he says to her, I'm stressed. I'm not trying to reject you. Are you with me so far? This is what a marital love does. We're going to circle this back after our 3 other points. But marital love makes you shed parts of you that conceal you, and makes you reveal parts of you that show more of who you are. If she taps into her compassion for him, then she becomes even more beautiful because she's more compassionate, more kind. And if he lets her in, because he doesn't want her to feel rejected and alone, he has now also become more soft, more kind, more connected. So marital love, unlike unconditional love, makes you change for the other and makes you become more of who you were meant to be. And with that, it also makes you healthier because it makes you remove the barriers that are inside you. He has a barrier. He's not connected. When I am stressed, I need to be alone, disconnected. I'm not trying to be cranky. I'm not trying to be angry. I'm not trying to be mean to my kids. I just don't know how else to be because I'm not connected. But if I let her in, then I become a bit more connected. I remove the barriers and I become more of who I'm supposed to be.
That's not how we're wired.
That it's fascinating that you say that, because that's part, this is going to be in number 3. It's going to be in number 3. Because
We're missing half a chromosome.
this is what it is that parental love in some ways feels more natural, even when it hurts, but marital love doesn't feel natural, even though it's actually our deeper essence. It's our deeper essence. So let's take this further. So we have 2 pieces so far. We have parental love, which is basically self-sacrificial, about being a giver so that the child has the bridge between themselves and unconditional love and self-worth. And then we have marital love that has some separateness in it because it's not unconditional. You know, people always say, like, I want him to love me unconditionally. I want her to love. Marriage is not unconditional. Because it's conditional, it works as well as it does, if it's done right. And it moves towards unconditionality, but it doesn't start there. It doesn't start there. So marital love allows us to shed parts of us that are in the way of ourselves and in the way of each other. And the only way that happens if you see each other as separate from you, separate from the other. So number 1, there are 4 things. Are we together so far? Is this more than what we asked for a Sunday morning? I'm gauging you. I'm gauging you so far, and so far we look okay. So we have 3 more points, and the other ones will go. Let's number 2. So what's part of the health in a family is to be able to have connection with children and to have connection with your spouse. What's number 2? I'm curious if you did, for those of you that have children, one Shabbat meal, ask them what they think are your values. And ask separately for the husband and for the wife. Each of your children will likely say different things, and will definitely say different things about you and your spouse. And you can help them with values depending on their age. Say, like, what's most important to daddy? What's most important to mommy? What are the things that matter to us the most? Recently, the OU did a huge study together with graduate school at Yeshiva University about what family systems do well in how their children end up living with the values that the parents gave. A fascinating study. And they put in so much beautiful work into it. And we were privileged, my husband and I, to take a peek at it before it was published. One of the main themes were that families that transmit values well are clear about what matters to them. Healthy families have values and are not afraid of them. That are not sheepish about them, they're clear about them, they own them, and they're willing to make sacrifices. And their children see this is what matters to our parents. There's a story that I heard from Rabbi Wallerstein Zatzal. I used to work with him in a school for teens, for girls that were teens at risk. I was a clinical director there for a number of years. I got to learn a lot from him. He was really one of my role models as a human being to work with. He passed away a few years ago. I really miss him. You know, during this time of the war, I missed him even more because I just wanted to have this knowing, like, what would he say right now? Even though in a way my soul knows what he would say. I really missed him even more. I just want to pause here for a moment. Speaking of connection and how we know that connection is something we seek the most, is I don't know if you have the same quasi-obsession that I have, which is watching the reunion videos of the hostages with their families, like over and over again. We're not watching them eat a meal. We're watching them connect with their family members. Of all the things their body missed, even more than food, it was that hug with mom. It was that hug with wife. We're wired for wanting connection, even when seeking that is something that feels very unwired inside us. So he told a story about a couple that became wealthy. And in one of his first gifts to his wife for a holiday, this husband wanted to buy his wife something very special and unique. And he didn't know what to do with the money yet. I know it's a problem many wish to have, but he went to a very wealthy, important person, and he asked, what do you think I can buy for her for this holiday? And he said, I'll tell you something that's most valuable. Buy her this bird, a specific bird you can only buy in this particular village from this particular bird seller. It is the most valuable thing for you to buy. So he goes ahead and buys this bird. He brings her this bird. And all the wives in the room are like, husbands, don't listen to the story. I don't want a bird. And he says, I don't know how to cook it. I don't know what to do with it. But let's figure it out. This is new for you. This is new for me. So she tries to cook this bird. And they sit down for a meal. And they're expecting to taste something like never had. This is always what we seek. We seek newness, right? This is going to be a different type of bird. And they can't even chew it. This reminds me, one time we were at a meal with our kids. Thank God we get to take our kids sometimes to these like events, right? And they had duck. And I remember one of my kids turning to me and saying, like, do they just have chicken? Why do they have to have duck? It's just not the same as chicken. So sometimes what we want really is what's familiar to us. But here he was looking to feel the richness that he now was. He wanted to feel rich by eating this bird. But he wasn't feeling rich. And he's like, maybe I just don't know how to be rich because this tastes not good to me. And maybe we didn't cook it well. So he goes back to the original guy who suggested the bird to him. And the guy his eyes widen. He said, you cooked the bird? You're not supposed to cook that bird. That bird is the most magnificent singer. It's able to follow melodies, and it's going to fill your house with song. You cooked it. Rav Moshe Shapiro talks about the power of Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur helps us put what's priority in number 1 and what's not priority in number 2 and 3. Most of life's mistakes is when we prioritize the secondary and make the secondary the priority. Yeah, the bird could be cooked, but that's not its priority. That's not its essence. That's not what it is. A healthy family and a healthy person is one that knows what's the bird for. Is it for singing or is it for cooking? I remember one client telling me, these are moments that I experienced where I want to stand up to the people I work with. She said, I grew up poor, and I didn't even have money to get pizza when my class had pizza day. My parents didn't have it. She said, now that we are very well to do, I'm excited that we get to be the ones that get to give the playground to the school, because we get to give the playground and the kids have a playground and we get to choose the teachers we want. I like this. I like the way that feels. But then she turned to me and she said, in one of these moments that have humility and power in it all at once, she said, Dr. Perlman, but you know what I don't want anymore? I don't want to feel like the better person in the room anymore. I needed to feel that at first, where being rich made me feel better. Because it kind of felt like it was repairing being that I was poor and I was worse. But she's like, I don't want this feeling. I like the power, I like the impact it gives me, but I don't like this feeling that I'm better than my friends. She's saying, this is not why God gave me the money so that I feel better. That's not priority. This is not the bird singing. This is the bird being cooked. A healthy family is able to use the bird for singing, not for cooking. And when that always comes, I think, with sacrifice. I just want to tell you that I grew up in a traditional home, but I remember my father telling me stories. My father is a dentist, and he went to medical school, and that he wouldn't eat the meat with his friends when they would go out to dinners. As a child, I remember growing up with that story. And I remember learning and internalizing living with value, living with priority means living with sacrifice. And I think part of today's culture is that we're afraid of sacrifice because it's all about comfort and it's all about what feels right to you in the moment. And I think we're afraid to transmit sacrifice to our children. But what else does living with sacrifice mean? It means that they're able to have self-esteem. I'll tell you what I mean. We think that what builds self-esteem is just unconditional love, but that's not true. When a 4-year-old writes, right now our 5-year-old is learning how to write, and he wrote a note to our son in Israel, and it said love, L-U-V, and his name over an entire page. Now, when our older son is going to get this note, how is he going to feel? Like $1 million, right? Everything's in those 3 letters, L-U-V, love. That's all everything is contained in it. But let's say in 10 years from now, he writes him the same letter. Maybe they're boys, maybe that would be enough. That's the truth. But let's see, that's the note he writes, and he gives it to me, and he said, this is my project, this is what I wrote, but the Mora gave me a D. It's not fair. I did it, this is all I wanted to do. And a lot of pop psychology would say, no, make him feel good about what he did. It's good, what you did is good. It's good, this is how you felt, but will he believe you? What's the answer? Will that build self-esteem? It won't. It won't build self-esteem because he knows he could do better. Self-esteem is built in children when they stretch themselves, when there is some sacrifice involved. When they feel the stretch inside themselves, they feel, I can do hard things. Isn't that something you wish that we knew a little bit better? We can do hard things. When you see people with self-esteem, they have a sense of, we can do hard things. And that comes with sacrifice, and that comes with being able to know what the bird is for. Is it for cooking, or is it for singing? So then, you have these 2 ideas, connection, values, and sacrifice, but then I want to tell you something else. I had a girl, when I worked at the school for teens at risk, this is number 3. When I worked at the school for teens at risk, I had a father and daughter come in. I'll never forget this. There's some moments that become part of the way I view the world, and this is one of them. And the father said, of all the things she's doing, and she really felt a lot of lack of self-worth, and she was acting in all the ways that you think someone that doesn't feel worthy would act. In every way. In many ways, this teenage daughter was a parent's worst nightmare. And he sat next to her. It was fascinating because he said, what bothers me the most is that she smokes. It was surprising because that's not usually what I hear from parents. What bothers me the most is that she smokes. And in that moment, how did she feel as he says this, by the way? She felt very judged. And she felt like, I just don't want to be around Daddy. All he says is all the things that bother him about me. You know, when I sit in front of teachers, now I no longer work with teenagers just because I don't have the patience for them. I can't work. I now, thank God, hire associates that are amazing with teenagers because they're just amazing at teenagers. God bless them. They work really well with teenagers. But when I did work with teenagers, it was a privilege to work with them. They taught me a lot. And I remember this one girl, she's telling me about this party that she went to, and she was challenged at this party with behaving in ways that she knew were not reflective of who she wanted to be. But then she's telling me about the moment that she rose to the challenge and she didn't act on something. She didn't. In those moments when I sit there as a therapist in the room, I feel a little bit guilty because I wish that she was telling this to her mother or to her father. Like, how do I get the privilege to hear this story? So then I asked her, did you tell your parents that you did this? Did you tell your parents that you were challenged with this? And did you tell them? And she says, I can't tell them because for me to tell them that I overcame this, I'd have to tell them where I was. And as soon as I start to tell them where I was, they won't want to hear anything else I have to say. They won't want to hear it. So this is number 3. Number 3 of a healthy home is the capacity to listen. If we want to have connection with our children, that means we need to be willing to listen to things we don't want to hear, and not only listen to things we want to hear. Listening means being open to hearing something you don't know. And if you want to connect to your child, you can't give them the feeling that you only want to be fed what you want to know, that you're open to hearing even what you don't want to know. Listening is, I think, of the most powerful tools to connection. And it always changes. It helps you be flexible. After about a year of stunning work this first girl did, she comes over to me and she goes, Dr. P, it's been 32 days since I touched the cigarette. 32 days. So of course I asked her, did you tell your father? I remember him a year ago sitting here. I hated that she's a smoker, but now she has shed many ways that she behaved, and she was living a very worthwhile life. So I asked her, and guess what she said? No, but this is something he'd want to hear, don't you think? She said, I think he gave up on me a long time ago. So listening helps you know what the other needs. Because first she needed acceptance, and now she needs pride. She needs acknowledgement. She needs appreciation. When you listen to the other, you know how to respond to them. You're not just listening to yourself. And the reason I put this right after the values point is because sometimes how we respond, even though our values stay the same, shift based on where the other person is at. If you're always the same, that means you're not responding to the people around you, even though your values could be the same. Listening is also the most important thing in marriage. And a lot of times when a couple comes in and they say, we don't communicate well, and then something changes in the session. They leave the session, they feel like something new happened. Do you think they said anything new? What do you think? Nothing new. They've said the same thing 274 times. She said something about his mother, and he said something about her brother, and this was a circle. They said the same exact thing. It wasn't like, but what's new? You know, when a couple comes in, each of them has a narrative. Their narrative, right? And what do they want from me? What do you think? Yes, for sure what they want from me is for me to agree with the right narrative. Now, which is the right narrative? The one that they have, right? Their whole goal in the first session is that you hear my narrative and you agree with the narrative I have. What's my goal? What's my goal in the session? So that's what I need to do. So that, thankfully, is not so hard for me. I could see the patterns and I could see the pieces. It's not, at this point, I really don't have biases. And if I do, sometimes it takes me a couple more sessions to not have any bias. I'm really able to see the truth in every narrative. But what's my goal for them?
Help them see the truth in both of them.
Is to hear something new that I haven't heard before in the old story. That's my goal. That's a successful first session, is when they hear something new. This is how intimacy in a relationship is built. Is when you listen and are able to hear something you haven't heard before in a newer way, in a deeper way. A lot of times you know what your spouse is about to say and you can finish their sentence and you know exactly what you're going to say back. How they're going to say it back, and we go in these loops and nothing new happens. Nothing new happens. So listening to something, and I like to ask this question, what's something that she's telling me that I'm not listening to? What's something he's saying that I'm not responding to? And now I want to end with 4. This is a hard one to convey in what I want to do in 3 minutes, but it's too important not to convey it. People, I had given talks on anniversaries, sometimes of very hard moments. And more recently, I had given a talk around a time that when people are so down and they don't have the will to live anymore. And they make choices that feel choiceless in the moment, but they don't have the will to live anymore, and they feel like they just cannot be in this life. And somebody asked me, if someone is struggling with such a deep depression, what do I tell them? What do I tell them? Do I tell them, no, it's not so bad? Do I tell them, what is my response to them? And I thought about this, and this is what I want to tell you. This is the last point I want to make. It has 2 points in it. The last point has 2 points in it. I think by now you see that my points are not always 1 point. But I hope the essence comes through. I said, you cannot convince somebody that something isn't bad. You can't convince a couple that they're not hurting. They are. They're hurting so badly. You can't convince a person that they feel so much pain that it's overwhelming them. You can't. You can't fight against that pain. The only thing you could do is offer hope that it could be different. And that maybe that difference is worthwhile. And allow them, give them some choice inside them to do the fight themselves. You know, you said we're not hardwired for this. It's true because we have to choose it. When I worked at this Teens at Risk, I worked there for a number of years as a clinical director. And I want to tell you, those were some of my most sleepless nights, beyond the babies that I stayed up with. I had girls in emergency rooms, and I had rehabs, and I had overdoses. It was really scary to work there. It was really scary to work there. I remember still in my mind's eye, sitting at the top of the staircase, talking quietly because I couldn't wake up my baby, and I didn't want to wake up my husband, who has his own sleepless nights with the programs that he runs. And I remember how scary it was to work there all those times, and how I didn't know how it would end. Would I ever miss an overdose? Was I supposed to send a girl to the ER that I didn't send because I didn't want her to feel the shame, and I took the risk? It was always in this tension, right? I'll circle back to that in 2 minutes. So when I sit in front of a couple, or I sit in front of a person that says, it's not worth it, it's too hard, all I want to do is give them the hope that it could be different, right? At the end of the day, living with health is living in the hope and not just in the despair. I always say that the power of love and life is more powerful than trauma. All of this talk on trauma and all of the sacredness to trauma, and it's true. Trauma tells a real, true story about us that needs to be addressed. But life, hope, connection is always more powerful than trauma. So 2 pieces about that. I'm sitting in front of an addict. He's a husband. He's had many years of severe addiction to a few things. Really, not just 1 or 2. Pretty severe addiction. And he's getting married. And he says, Dr. Perlman, I don't know if I could do this. If I go back to my addiction, I'm going to hurt her. I'm going to hurt my children. I don't even know if I should have children. Is it worth it to take the risk? I can ruin their lives. I'm afraid of myself. I'm afraid of what I could be. I know what I could be. It's pretty bad. And do I believe him? I do. I believe him. Do I know for sure that he won't be bad? Do I know for sure? I don't. So he can be, and he needs to be afraid of his bad, so that he protects himself and he does the work he needs to do. But he has a choice. In the very parts that we're not wired, we can choose to live in the hope of the life. Is it worth it for you to try? Is it possible you'll be able to love her and respect her? You'll be able to be a different father to your kids that your father was to you. Is it possible that that will happen? And I want to tell you the most important piece. When I started to do trauma work, this was many years ago, I have a rabbanit, I have a mentor I speak with. I felt very afraid to do the work. It's like soul surgery. It's like neurosurgery of the soul. You get into this space. You don't want to cut off too much. You don't want to leave anything behind. It's all the essence of the human being. So I sat in front of my rabbanit, and I said to her, Rabbaton Heller, I'm afraid to do the work. I feel so small. These were my words. I remember we were sitting on two pull-out chairs in the yard. And of course, the part of me, the human part of me, wants to hear what from her? What do I want her to say to me? You're so good. You're amazing. No one can do this better than you, right? But she said the wisest words to me. This is the gift of a mentor. They tell you something you don't yet know. Not just affirm something you already know. She said, you're as small as you need to be. Don't think you're any bigger. You're not the one doing the healing. So when I left BCA, when I left this high school, I turned to my sister-in-law and I said to her, I'm so grateful no one died on my watch. I really felt this. I felt relief in that. When I told this to Rabbi Wallerstein, he said, we can only be grateful if also no one dies not on your watch. He is a step beyond me, right? He's like, it's not about you. We don't want anything to happen, whether or not you're here. And she said to me, you needed to do your work. You needed to be afraid to do your work, but God was with you the entire time. So I want to tell you, in all of these pieces of connection, movement, essence, listening, all we need to do is our part, that choice we make in the very parts that we don't feel wired, but that we rewire ourselves to our true essence. And the outcome of it almost doesn't make sense. Trauma work works. It's just a bit of this and a bit of that, and some real hard choices by the client, and the healing is right in front of me. Couples work works. The couple comes in, they literally think they're hanging on a thin thread. They're coming almost just to prove to themselves that they did it. But a little shift here and a little shift there, and they have a marriage they didn't even know they could have. As alone as I felt on those nights sitting at the top of my steps, I needed to feel the aloneness, so I did my part. So I woke up at 2 a.m. and I called Connecticut Westchester Hospital. I needed to do my part, because if I didn't feel alone, I wouldn't have done it. But ultimately, God was protecting these girls and me the whole time. We do our part, and then the healing, the result, the satisfaction, the bigness is beyond our part, because we're not alone. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for this beautiful morning together. I bless us all that we celebrate the bigness of what we get from the small steps that we take. Thank you.
I want to thank Dr. Perlman for really an incredible talk. I'm sure I'm not the only one who's going to go home for any time now for the next couple hours. Please, nobody call me. We'll be listening to all of Dr. Perlman's material. Again, it's on Torah Anytime, and where else? YouTube with.
I think it's usually Chazaq puts it on also, and on, yeah.
Okay,
Sometimes it goes on YouTube also, but it depends.
Okay, so just Google Dr. Perlman, you'll find her. You'll find more of these important topics. Thank you so much. Thank you to Chazaq. Thank you again to the Jacobs family for sponsoring. And of course, thank you to Yigal for, I forgot to mention it before, thank you so much to Yigal for bringing in the bagels and the cream cheese and everything. Thank you so much. Wouldn't be able to do it without him.